October 14, 1939, 12:58 a.m. Inside the Royal Navy's most secure harbor, a torpedo from the German submarine U47 slams into the World War I-era Revenge-class battleship HMS Royal Oak. The blast is minor, muffled. The crew's first assumption is an internal accident, a small fault in a store or line. They are tragically wrong. Within minutes, a second devastating salvo finds the hull, and the ship begins a fatal list. In the heart of Scapa Flow, considered secure by design, the unthinkable has begun. This is the moment-by-moment account of a catastrophe that should never have happened, and the fortress that was believed to make it impossible. The unbreachable fortress begins at Scapa Flow, the Royal Navy's primary base in the Orkney Islands, revered for defenses layered over decades. Scapa Flow's reputation as a naval sanctuary rested on deliberate engineering built on natural strength. The Royal Navy transformed this vast, sheltered anchorage into a fortress by sinking block ships, old merchant vessels and warships, across key channels. These hulks formed a jagged, shifting maze of underwater metal intended to rip open any submarine attempting a submerged entry. Alongside the block ships stood the anti-submarine nets, heavy steel mesh curtains, in some places reaching from seabed to surface, stretched across the main entrances. Patrol boats cruised these lines, and shore-based lookouts kept watch. The geography did the rest. Narrow passages, treacherous currents, and a seafloor of deep basins, broken by sudden shallows, turned the approaches into a navigational trap. Naval planners placed particular confidence in the eastern approaches. Channels like Kirk Sound were judged naturally secure by shallow water and a dense concentration of block ships. On paper, the combination of man-made obstacles, active patrols, and rugged terrain left no reasonable path in. The operating assumption was simple: no rational submarine commander would try to thread such a route in wartime, under watch. That confidence shaped deployment. Capital ships, including the World War I-era Revenge-class HMS Royal Oak, lay in the central basin, close to support and shielded, so it was believed, by layers of steel, stone, and tide. The fortress operated as a system: barriers to deny access, nets to catch the bold, patrols to detect the reckless. Official assessments before the war rated a successful penetration as negligible. Yet static defenses rely on constant verification. Nets sag, storms move hulks, currents scour channels. The schedule of patrols and inspections, regular in principle, faced the pressure of early war demands and the belief that the eastern channels were self-protecting. In practice, vigilance softened where confidence ran highest. Scapa Flow was designed to be unbreachable. Its architects trusted the sum of obstacles, geography, and routine. But a fortress is only as strong as its most overlooked corner, and on the eastern rim, one channel would soon test every assumption. Attention turned to a single weakness on the eastern side: the gap in the armor. Kirk Sound, on the eastern approach, presented the most unlikely entry point. British naval assessments had long considered it impassable to a submarine due to sunken block ships and shallow, obstacle-strewn waters. Yet conditions had changed. Shifts in tides, scouring currents, and gradual movement around the hulks had opened a navigable line that was not recognized in time. It was not a permanent lane, nor a clear channel, but a narrow possibility that emerged under specific circumstances. The opportunity existed only under the cover of darkness and high tide. It lay at a depth that demanded precise tidal calculation and careful trim, in a throat of water notorious for strong, unpredictable currents. A submarine commander would have one brief window, and little room to correct error. He would need to place his boat exactly, advance at minimal speed, and hold steady against eddies and cross-set flows that tugged at the hull. Meanwhile, the British defensive focus remained fixed on the deeper, more conventional western approaches, like Hoxa Sound, where the main fleet traffic flowed. The assumption that the eastern channels were naturally protected by geography and block ships had become an article of faith. That view shaped resource allocation and routine. Patrol patterns reflected it. Royal Navy boats generally avoided close work in the hazardous eastern channels because of the very obstructions meant to defend them. The risk of damaging their own craft on steel and stone discouraged regular, intimate inspection. The flaw, therefore, lay less in the physical barriers than in the system built around them, a failure to verify, adjust, and test assumptions as weather and water quietly altered the ground truth. In those early months of the war, inspection protocols for static defenses strained under competing demands. Nets sagged after storms. Tides worked at the seams between hulks. What looked secure on a chart was not always secure in the water. The result was a fragile equilibrium, effective on paper, vulnerable in practice. This single point of weakness would prove decisive. Failure exposed the larger logic of Scapa Flow's security, a fortress depending on constancy in a place defined by movement. Exploiting such a fleeting gap required a navigator who treated the approach as a problem of timing, depth, and nerve rather than bravado. One commander would study that problem until a path appeared. The master of stealth stepped forward in the form of Captain Günther Prien, a commander defined by patience and exactitude. He treated Scapa Flow as a navigational problem to be solved. While British planners discounted the eastern approaches, he concentrated on Kirk Sound, the route thought to be impossible due to sunken block ships and shallow water. He studied charts, intelligence summaries, and tidal tables with meticulous care, aligning his plan to moonlight, tide height, and currents. Every choice aimed at reducing detection and increasing control in confined water. Prien rehearsed the approach in his mind, turn by turn, until the sequence felt mechanical. Stealth governed everything. U47 would close the final miles on electric motors at bare steerageway to keep noise and wake to a minimum. The conning tower would pass within yards of metal and stone, guided by a narrow band of depth and a timing window measured against the tide. It was not a charge, it was an exercise in control under darkness. His calculation extended to human behavior. The British belief that no submarine would attempt the eastern gate created the space he needed. By choosing Kirk Sound, he avoided the heavier patrol patterns and searchlights of Hoxa Sound and the main western channels. The transit through the obstacles demanded silent coordination, helm corrections by degrees, ballast trimmed by inches, lookouts straining for the line of black on black that marked a safe lead. A scrape or clang would end the attempt. Once U47 crossed into the basin, the contrast was stark. Prien's method married preparation to audacity. He did not rely on luck. He engineered a path through a space others dismissed as closed. The fortress had been built to defeat a direct assault. He advanced where certainty had dulled vigilance. By the time U47 settled into firing position, the plan had narrowed to a sequence of actions measured in minutes and meters. What followed would be judged by sound, shock, and the clock. 13 minutes began the moment U47 found its mark. At approximately 12:58 a.m., the first torpedo slammed into Royal Oak's bow. The explosion reverberated through the hull, but no immediate alarm followed. Confusion, not panic, governed the initial response. Many assumed an internal accident, an inflammable store, a boiler fault. That misdiagnosis cost minutes as men searched for a supposed onboard problem instead of preparing for a torpedo attack. The command did not sound a general alarm, and most of the crew remained unaware they were under external assault. The delay proved decisive. At 1:16 a.m., Captain Günther Prien fired a second salvo. 3 torpedoes struck the starboard side in rapid succession. These detonations were far more violent. They tore open the hull and ignited stocks of ammunition, generating a fireball that engulfed compartments and fed secondary explosions near a main magazine. Bulkheads buckled. Seawater drove inward through multiple breaches. Royal Oak developed a sharp list to starboard. The angle rendered the port lifeboats useless as they swung inward and smashed against the superstructure. Starboard boats dipped into the water, few of them launchable in the dark and the chaos. The speed of flooding accelerated the collapse. Water raced through open hatches and ventilation runs, found the lowest decks, and trapped men as ladders twisted and passageways narrowed. Lights failed. With electrical systems gone, the interior went black. Men below fought rising water and moving debris, trying to reach the weather decks by memory and touch. Orders were shouted but muffled by compartment doors and the tilt of the ship. On the upper decks, some crew clustered near the rails, waiting for guidance that could not organize fast enough against the rate of sinking. Within 13 minutes of the second attack, the battleship rolled hard to starboard and lay on her beam ends. She paused, then slid under, vanishing into the deep of Scapa Flow. The speed of the sinking prevented any coordinated evacuation for the majority of those stationed below. In total, 833 lives were lost, including more than 100 boy sailors under the age of 18. An irreplaceable loss sealed in silence. When the water closed over the overturned hull, the site of destruction became something else entirely, resting on the seabed and marking the cost of that night. From that night forward, the site was defined by what remained below. The wreck as war grave begins with an overturned battleship lying silently beneath the cold waters of Scapa Flow, resting at approximately 33 meters. It became an immediate war grave for 833 sailors who perished. Among them were more than 100 boy sailors under the age of 18. Their presence on board marked a harsh reality of the era and deepened the human cost of the loss. The wreck's status later received formal protection under the Protection of Military Remains Act of 1986. The designation as a controlled place gives the site legal shielding from unauthorized interference. The law acknowledges the sanctity of the location and affirms that those sealed in silence within the steel hull are to be left undisturbed. Each year, the Royal Navy conducts a remembrance ceremony directly over the site. A ship comes to station, and a wreath is committed to the water in a simple, formal tribute to the crew. Royal Navy divers, in a carefully managed operation, recovered the ship's bell. It serves as a central memorial at the Royal Navy Museum in Portsmouth, a tangible link to the men who never returned. Public diving is prohibited. Access is limited to official inspections, with Royal Navy teams conducting periodic surveys and maintenance. Surveys monitor the hull's condition and ensure the site remains secure. The area is actively watched for any unauthorized activity, preserving the dignity of this final resting place. The wreck carries a dual legacy. It is physical evidence of a profound naval disaster and a tactical failure that revealed a critical vulnerability. It is also a sacred space of national memory, a focal point for grief, remembrance, and respect. Preservation efforts aim to balance those realities, maintaining the site's solemnity as a war grave while allowing limited, respectful study that adds to the historical record. As the years pass, protection around the wreck endures, and with it a clear lesson. What lies below is not only a memorial, but a standing measure of what complacency can cost. From here, the story turns to the reckoning that followed, and how the shock of Royal Oak's loss reshaped thinking at the highest level. In the early weeks of World War II, Royal Oak's loss forced a fundamental reassessment of naval harbor defense. The Admiralty launched an inquiry that exposed the fatal gap in security planning. They ordered massive engineering works to seal the eastern entrances with concrete causeways, the Churchill barriers. The attack proved that static defenses alone were insufficient, and that even a mighty battleship could fall to stealth and determination. A new doctrine followed: continuous verification, flexible patrol patterns, and active testing of assumed barriers. The wreck remains a silent lesson on complacency. The loss of 833 sailors, including more than 100 boys, endures as a stark reminder of the human cost when confidence outruns rigor.